I guess maybe one thing I'd like to maybe see the conversation with is that I think it would be nice if we could have some abstractions for letting us think about files and directories, the pieces that we need. That allows us to swap out the underlying hash-linked file system components. There have been a number that have already existed. There'll be new ones that come out that are better. Ideally, our tooling is able to handle this and handle new things without it being like traumatic. Files are sort of really easy because they're bytes. I just gave a talk where I showed loading, BitTorrent koalas over gateways. Easy because they're bytes. Directories are more complicated. There's like a reason why like SHA-SUM doesn't work on directories because they didn't want to tell you what it meant to hash a directory. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'll see things. Have any thoughts on where they want to see UnixFS go from here?
I have one thought. I don't think files are easy.
Yeah.
Well, because of the fact that we already have chunk files and the fact that we care about links, it makes them already conceptually much more complicated than a file in a regular file system. And in addition, I think I remember that one of the challenges with UnixFS was like UnixFS was trying to preserve Unix file systems. There's other operating systems that are not Unix, which we don't very well support at the moment. And you have all these metadata about files, which is different. And in the operating system, the environment work, it's unclear if you want to preserve them or not. And you have some links and different kinds of links, which are not the links that we are talking about. Links that the operating system talks about. And so I think, so we already have three types of directories with symlinks and files. So I think it would be nice if files were simple. I'm just saying that I don't think files are that simple.
Do you think the abstraction for files is fairly agreed upon?
Content-wise, yes. Metadata-wise, no.
Yeah. Alternate streams.
Sorry?
Alternate ADS, alternate data streams, which is a thing that you can use to basically be like, there's a file, and then if I look at it with my glasses on, I have different data. It's metadata, if you will. It's a feature I'm looking at. So I agree that metadata is different. I mean, I guess I would consider that in similar category to like directories, in the same way that like, yeah, the way people think about directories and what data lives where, and in particular, like the reason I think part of the reason I think that directories are hard is because people debate over where the metadata should live. Does it live in the directory? Does it live in the thing associated with the file? But either way, people tend to want the bytes to be accessible as an object independent of metadata. And so there's at least that small piece, which is like the thing that renders my koala, which like seems agreed upon.
I just want to be clear that we're just clear on the distinction of metadata for the file, or like the metadata for the file in the context of a directory, because there's metadata on a file essentially that is like internal to the specific file extension.
Yeah, totally should be.
Yeah, just want to make sure that the line right there that we're kind of the metadata is above the file extension, whatever.
Big point of order. Is someone mind taking some notes just in case the owl is not great? Steve, do you mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally where the metadata lives and how many layers of it, which things it belongs to. I don't know if it doesn't seem controversial though to say that people would want to have a CID that points to like the bytes without metadata. They may also want something with the metadata, but like isn't there a lot of context that people should be like, I want the bytes and I want that to be duplicated. I don't care where my picture was taken or all of this. Like I'm happy for that to maybe live elsewhere.
So we have to parse into the image to find or to plug in the data.
And that depends, right? So if you use a JPEG and they shoved it in there, then okay, it's easier for you to put it in the image, and that's part of the definition of the image.
Okay, yeah, as long as like we're not trying to like read in and pull out metadata and cut it out from something that already exists, and like we're just talking about stuff that we're adding on top, then
Yeah.
I think I would contest that only one case of metadata, which is file name. I think most of the time people want actually a pointer to the thing, including the file name, which is really annoying, horrible right now in all gateways. Like things not in the directory, which is why UnixFS stuff things into a directory as a file. If you don't have the directory, you don't have the file name, and that regularly creates problems.
So you want like so like I have a PowerPoint which is like, you know, a Dean cool presentation, and then I send it to you, and you locally name it Dean's terrible, and you want these things to not be duplicated at the byte level because.
No, I'm saying that I think I'm saying that I regularly will want to talk about this in combination. They might be under the hood two blocks that are stuck together.
Yeah.
So they duplicate. If I change the name, the content stays the same. But my point is that if you send me a link, I want to have the information that you call it means cool presentation.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, I feel like as long as my contention is only that I think that people will want to have a reference that allows them to get just the bytes. They may also want references that give them other things. The bytes seems like fairly.
I think this is also something of the transport leaking in, or like one of the problems to solve is one record per block, so we try not to break blocks. One thing would be really nice here is like, it's like graphing is kind of overkill for a lot of this stuff. But like mini graphing, where it's like I can describe very simple, like I need this small path here. This makes all the blocks along the way down to this thing, and that's it. Would solve this because then you can just say like if you want to fetch file, it's totally fine now to break into metadata and data, and then I can duplicate data and have all the metadata blocks or whatever, and I just like can use something to fetch everything down to something. That makes sense. Maybe use graphing for this, but it's all good.
I mean, there's also a challenge with UnixFS fetching right now to fetch the whole directory personally.
Well, that's the thing, you don't break up so you have like small files, it's really, really bad because you fetch all the small files to list the directory because you don't break them up. But we don't do that because otherwise you have like down small blocks.
So there's an aspect of metadata that we did not mention yet, which is in the context of directory listing, is the size of the things in the directory. And also in the context of fetching row bytes of the thing, even if I don't care about the name, people still care what's the size of the entire thing. That impacts user experience, because if there's no content like header in the gateway response, it will be the Windows spinner. If you provide the information about that, then the user agent will show progress. So I'd say size is more important than the file names. And still the problem is how we represent where the size lives in the directory tree. So right now in the UnixFS, we have in the root node, you have information about the total size of sub tags, but that's raw data of the file plus DAC envelopes. And there's no way to know the size of the file itself without fetching subblocks. And that's why if we have like 10K NFT drops, you don't want to fetch 10K of subblocks just to know their size. So we are like skipping fetching that right now as a representation. But if we had that both information, what's the size of the DAG and what's the size of the raw data, the size of, if it's like a file, right? Or if it's a directory, like sum of all files in the directory without metadata. I think we need both information. So there are like two sizes. If we design something new, we should account for that, and it should account for enumerating directories in the most efficient way. Because right now, we in the spec, like we had to write a guideline that's a paragraph, helping gateway implementers to not shoot themselves in the foot and not fetch 10K of blocks, because they may not think one step ahead. And I think if we had something better, it avoids this problem. So we need to think about size as part of the UnixFS and metadata.
So what's preventing us from having like the metadata both like next to the file, like as a link and the directory? So the directory itself can point to metadata where it has the metadata or some of like the most useful metadata like size and name, and then as well as like a pointer or like a link to more metadata for a file, as well as the pointer to the raw bytes. So if you wanted to give someone just a single file, you give them the link of metadata of the file. And then if you have a directory, then you can go directly to the bytes, or just go directly to the bytes.
I think you should do that. If I, for example, pin a directory, people have the expectation that they will pin the file. However, now if we have this metadata block, which is not part of which is contains the same information as directory, so the directory does not link to it directly, then it will not get pinned. So pinning the file will not just be a subset of pinning the directory. We could also just have the link to the actual metadata block in the directory, but that means if you have many files like idle there, then you're back to downloading lots of blocks. You could also duplicate the directory, no, the metadata. So the directory has the metadata, but it also points to the metadata block. And if you think that, for example, maybe size is important when bind type isn't, you can put bind type to just the metadata block.
But I guess I have a question for folks. Do we think that it'd be more useful to spend the time that we have talking about like what are the right ways we want to like structure data concretely, or what are the ways in which we might want to like deal with these things abstractly? Because my suspicion is that there's not a right answer to how you do this, right? People are going to be like, I want to put the data here, I want to put the data there. I want to duplicate the data. I want to duplicate the size metadata for the file in like multiple different places, because that will make it more efficient for me. Other people are going to be like, oh, that's miserable, and it's going to get out of sync, and you're going to hate your life, right? And like, I guess the area I personally think is more useful is to think like, how do we allow people to make those decisions themselves? Because I find like that's harder to do by a committee, but like the areas that I think we need to end up agreeing upon in order to make use of for people are like, what are the abstractions that we need for directories so they for files or metadata so that they can work in multiple scenarios as opposed to trying to agree on like the less correct way to do it. Because we're gonna find that that's really hard. My 2 cents. I don't know, like, you know, Brendan, I don't know if you guys have been working on classes and anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to set a cross-organizational framing on this, we've done a bunch of work on UnixFS back in the early days, and a lot of this conversation is hovering around a lot of that conversation. I wrote implementation of UnixFS that utilized the IPFS package from Go, which I think is actually a really interesting sort of like use case here, because it does isolate basically the need to be able to stat a file, which includes the things that you would expect that are sort of special metadata, the name of the file, the size of the bytes. It includes some Unix specific permissioning bits and some other bits. But like, if you think about UnixFS as an IPFS implementation, it shakes out a lot of these details, like requirements side of things. Then the other side, the one thing I would sort of push back on a little bit is like, I don't want to optimize for giving everybody every choice under the sun. I do think having more opinions here actually can help us shape the directionality and the intention of this technology. I think, you know, we opened this conference with what is IPFS, and like maybe UnixFS can be a little more opinionated to add some specificity to its intended use. Our experience building applications on IPFS, we just had this very surreal experience of having somebody starting a new startup 3 months old
with literally the exact same problem set that we had in the query days. We just need access control, arbitrary metadata, and some sort of mutability system. And it's like mutability is aside from this conversation, but I think those are the things that would be nice to see. If we're talking about a V2 of something, we're gonna make breakthrough changes. And what are we gonna offer? I would love us to discuss what does it look like to say, hey, can we actually do encryption? And can we put that in V2 of UnixFS? Please?
Is that like V2 of like a concrete implementation of the serialized data structure business?
Sure. I mean, I just
But like, I guess why? Like, why can't I just? Why would I not want to just like take UnixFS and like say you can use that because we can pass like a flag because UnixFS is no longer special, and I'll get a talk on like UnixFS on like UnixFS. Sorry, on IPLD pathing and being able to pass in like signaling mechanisms to say this is the thing, and then say UnixFS directory, UnixFS go, and like use that instead of saying like how do we make UnixFS v2 better? Because then like lots of people can try to make UnixFS v2 better, and we can have those conversations. I think it's probably useful to like share knowledge, and so I'm sure like right, you guys probably talked with like Ian around useful pieces of how to do like permissioning, description, access control for this kind of stuff, right? Like that's super useful for us building it. But I want whoever's like running gateways or whatever other sorts of common tooling may or may not care about and have the context and all the things the folks building the data layers care about to like give them something to give them a way to get out of your way. If that makes sense.
So UnixFS is like concrete implementation currently.
Yeah.
And so you're proposing we do something more generic. How is that different than just like an ADL? And different ADL that is similar to different properties, but just encrypts things or does metadata differently.
It's not super different. Okay. I think like an iteration of this that I talked, I think with Eric about, I think he probably proposed it to me, was like what if you have like a really base structure of like a directory does whatever mappings of path of like file of like name to the next thing, but like you also could have like again sort of in like the Go interface style of like try again, like does it have metadata here also? Yeah, it's got metadata. Let's use it. Oh, there's no metadata. Oh well, that goes on. And if we define like a sort of like the union of like I don't know what to call it, like the interfacey things that mean a directory, right? Sort of like the IPFS thing, but like the different places that we're willing to like make that try, then it looks sort of ADL-ish, right? You're sort of saying I want to connect the directory-ish interface.
Go and on stack number.
I think I'm saying something similar to what you're saying, but like the pattern that I'm noticing, but I'm not convinced this is the right path, is that like what we're really interested in is common access patterns, right? Like we know path, like that's an access pattern we know is a thing that we want. We know that as you said, files are just bytes, right? But they also might have metadata. So is there a common interface to what we all say is a file? And then that's where I get into this, let's throw out all the layers in between and not worry about codecs and ADLs and whatnot. Can you get from the bytes to the access pattern? Like, as long as you can do that, like that's what matters. But that requires being able to define a common access pattern that's for files and directories that we can all agree on. And can we do that? I mean, files are you said before this talk, files are just bytes, but then we said maybe in the course of this talk, it immediately emerged there's something else you want to be able to do. So, and you also like, at least in the Go experience, it was interesting because originally files were a bytes node, and we realized, well, no, files are very large ones. So you need to have the common ways of interacting with them. that you do with files, like seeking and reading.
May or may not be helpful. But we're focusing a lot on file system when what it sounds like sounds like what we actually care about is happen. Right? So if we're gonna go general, how general do we want to go? So that as just as a fundamental question, like we're going all the way from concrete implementation all the way up to arbitrary graphs. Right? And like maybe we should try to define that.
Be more specific, because when I think like file system things, there's pathing, right? But then there's like, what happens when you hit the end of the tunnel? So if you hit the end of the tunnel and it's a pile of bytes, I render a flaw. If I hit the end of the tunnel and it's a directory, maybe I try and turn it into a tar file or something. I don't know. I have something I want to do with it because it's directory-ish, but only if I know what to do at the end of the tunnel, right? And so I feel like we have some proposals or tools at our disposal to do the pathing piece, but the part where we're missing is what to do at the end. Once I've reached the end of the path, and I have reached a node, I've reached a block, then a bunch of other blocks. Now what do I do?
First, I think it's important to say we don't want to do the bad solution that some tools already do. It is like have two different things. If you have the slash at the end or not. I think everyone can agree on that. Please don't do that. Someone has a better idea.
I wanted to make it. I would like to make a case against the abstraction. If you look at operating systems, there may be 4 file systems practically in use on most Unix systems. There's like 1 plus some ones on those. I mean, there are more.
Everyone makes it possible because they want to.
Sorry. And my point is, but most people only ever use one file system. So for the people in this room, yes.
But there's a POSIX standard, right?
Yes, and that is good, right? But what I'm trying to say is not that having the standard is not important for file systems. What I'm trying to say is that 99.99% of all users are going to use one file system, and they want a file system that works. They don't want to care. They don't want to care about all this. And my worry is right now is like, and UnixFS to a certain extent does this today. It solves that for a large portion of users. Missing some features, yes. But I'm worried right now that what happens if we go into abstraction land, that we're still missing a good implementation of all the features. We have all nice abstractions, and we have 14 different file systems which all solve like a little piece of the nice things that users want. And then we have 4 construction sites, 1 abstraction, and no implementation that people actually want to use.
I think there are a couple parts there. One, if you do build these systems, they be interoperable. And then 2, like, instead of just going abstraction, start with like extensible systems. So if you start with like an extensible file system where like I can at least add custom file types in that not everyone will understand, then you can plug that into something like what Dean's looking at, where like you can make a custom file type that can link to BitTorrent. Then if your client understand, they can understand. Or like a version they can like translate something else to WASM, and that's just an option you can add on later.
Yeah, which goes back into the ADLs, I think, which is like, if you're going to make like an abstraction of things, you just make another ADL for it, and then so we can have a concrete implementation that works well for like 99.99% use cases, and then we can prototype with different new things, and then if you want to try with something else, you just load a different ADL and create that way.
I think.
So I think if we're talking about abstractions, we need to think about where are those abstractions applied. Because I think UnixFS design, for example, is not influenced by file layout. I think was the APIs ago. So, or just the normal file system, your IPFS, get, IPFS, whatever, add commands, right? It's trying to fit into the APIs that your Unix file system has. Then you have the problems when you're trying to take this file system to a different place, for example, in the browser using a gateway. And like there, the abstraction maybe not fits 100%, UnixFS in this case, not the abstraction, sorry. Because you have MIME types, sometimes some blind post website, for example. But if you want to have a browsable kind of file system looking thing, then it's fine.
Yes, but like any possible with metadata can solve one type of those kinds of problems.
Right. But maybe to illustrate the point, let's say you want to add encryption.
Yeah.
Maybe that plus ADLs in a gateway where it will be applied would not make that much sense. I'm just trying to raise the point of like thinking specifically about where you use the abstractions, because yeah, I think that's a really valuable point of view.
So when we built UnixFS, we added encryption versioning bunches that we needed, and it didn't work in gateways. But so we hacked around it we create a pretty tree that then removes all of the extra stuff, and we build a version of the latest snapshot in just regular UnixFS. And it's a bit of a hassle, but it works. And it's essentially like a horrible hacked around version of what we wish could happen at runtime as an ADL for gateways specifically. We do this literally 0 other times because this all happens in the outside of the gateway at the application layer, right? Where then the application knows how to read this specific kind of file system, and we're not loading in and applying, we're loading in this one.
But yeah, so the gateways are an application, right? They're like an opinionated-ish kind of thing, and that their opinion is depends who you ask. Maybe I would advocate that the opinion for gateways is to be radically unopinionated in order to make the URI scheme like portable, because everyone already hates us for wanting one URI scheme and then 2 URI schemes. And if we add IPFS, there'll be a 3rd URI scheme. And then if we add like a fission one and a pair, like they're just gonna murder us, right? And so that's my pitch. But like it's an application, and there may be other ones where people want to do like the same way that people have built like fuse things that try and like mount different other, things that implement some file system interface and like smush them all together. Other tools like that might exist, in addition to the tools that target very specific things. Even with the IPFS layer, like Durofo built an IPFS client that like relies on ref linking. Windows doesn't do ref linking. Really useful for what he's using it for. Like that's cool, right? But there will be some tools, and I think more than just gateways, that will want to be able to deal with more than just will want that interoperability.
A good example of abstraction, or you might want to use one of these abstractions, is like it'd be really nice if I could just take Git and a Git tree and just like import that into UnixFS because it has the versioning, it has everything. In theory, like you should be able to just like link to that from UnixFS or UnixFS or whatever and view it as a file system. But right now I have to just take all the data and re-import it, and it's not going to indicate we're not working with those or whatever. It's a different system. Abstractions let you paper over it and say, fine, like I have system A that I want to use, and then I can basically deal with foreign systems in system A.
But why wouldn't I translate the data into a file system and then view it?
Because they can't translate, so it's hash length.
Like you can write a program and translate it.
But that's what the abstraction is, literally what it is. It's a program that translates it. But it's a way to specify, like, use this program to translate this stuff, even if you don't know what this program is.
I just want to clarify what you're trying to describe. Because I don't understand it. Do you want to, the view you want to embed, is that the Git history, the Git tree, or is it the raw files that it stores?
Well, like the Git tree and the history. So if we're doing this UnixFS, we just do the Git tree. If we're doing this WinFS, we would do the Git history as well, because we have that. And like you should be able to basically write a translation that lets you view it as, but like, the problem is like, if you just do that in your application, then you have to support every single file system in your application. The nice thing about having this abstraction layer is that, okay, someone can write this once in something like WASM, and then when you link to one of these things, you'll specify, and here's the application you want to use, someone else can then use their WinFS browser, and it just works.
Right, but are we gonna put versioning into the abstraction? Probably not. But we probably do want that for gifts, so why wouldn't I do that at the application layer?
But you need to
So, what-
make an abstraction for WinFS basically, or version process.
So I would just back up with that, and so I'll be very brief in it. Yeah.
The goal is not to find every possible thing that we could want to abstract. It's more like, of all the things we could imagine abstracting, how many of these can we agree on, right? All of the metadata? No. The concept of pathing through directories? God, I hope so, right? Are there any other things that are that agreeable? I don't know.
Where are the thousands of users that want to access Git objects inside of UnixFS things?
Sorry, I'm just gonna, we'll come back to stack, but we're gonna lose the.
Yeah.
Wait, my turn?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm confused about like, there are only, like, there are no file system abstractions, 'cause, like, I feel like every interaction that I've ever had with files has been an abstraction, right? Like, I understand that I can change directory into a directory, and I don't care if underneath that is whatever the Linux system is, or the, the whatever's on my Mac, and that thing changes, seems like every 3 years, that one. So I want to understand, because you said there's not, like, we don't need abstraction for processing, but I want to understand what you're defining as abstraction. But I think maybe we have different definitions.
It didn't mean that we don't need abstractions for file systems. I meant that I don't think focusing our time right now on abstractions is actually that useful, because problems that we need to solve are much more concrete. And I'd rather like get as many clever people working on one file system implementation. And it is still called IPFS. And so for me, the canonical thing in IPFS is a file system that works.
So,
And right now, UnixFS does that to a certain extent.
So just like, I guess a brief thing, so I think it's a valid viewpoint. There is this tension that exists. I think, I don't know whether it was me or somebody else who said this on like the opening day. I think one of the tensions that like this like conference as a whole like expresses is figuring out the boundaries between like where it is helpful for us to agree on a thing and where it's helpful for us to like diverge and explore on a thing. And related to that is this like, again, non-technical, like human-based problem around like, do I want to invest, where is the appropriate amount of resources to invest in getting agreement on building a thing and putting all of the brains on one problem, which comes with the trade-off that you get to like agree on how to move forward, versus is there something smaller that you can get them to agree on that ends up unlocking more time in the end. And like, I don't know where the boundary is for that, but that's like the stress that is the tension between like your approach and the one I'm advocating for. And like I feel that when I look at like, I don't know, there's like 1,000 ways to make that swap better. Like the protocol is super dumb, the implementations could be way smarter, right? But then let's make more data transfer protocols. I mean, there's good reasons to do that. Do I wish I could maybe like convince more people, but that's what the world we operate in. We have other mechanisms that we care about. And so that's how we enable people to explore and do other things. And that's just like, I don't know where to draw the line, but that's kind of, I think, the nature of this.
I do also really like Brendan's point of who asked for this.
Yeah.
That like, so like I'm trying to make sure that we build a system that other people can expand on without us being bottlenecks. So that's always a problem. But there's a good point where like, yeah, we can fine forget. Like, I would like that as a full white, but no one really wants to be able to let you get IPFS. And honestly, no one probably wants to really look at IPFS to be nice, but it's not.
So I agree and I disagree. So I don't think it is important for me to be able to like have a mega directory thing that has a BitTorrent and a Git and another thing. And I don't think that's where a lot of the value is, but there is value in tooling that's like, so we have 17 exabytes of like storage that's like cost 0. Can I like take all the BitTorrent data and BitTorrent data and chuck it, take all the ISOs and like just chuck it there? Can I take all of the Git data and like chuck it there? And then pull it from places and use like content addressing, right? Like we have these tools that are unlocking like, that can unlock experimentation both in new things, but also old things. And so I'm also advocating that like, I think the old things have value, especially if you choose the old ones which are large. But there's also the new things that are coming that we can hopefully be prepared for by leveraging the old popular things that we can already see utility with. I don't know, at the very least, like, maybe this is a stupid example because it's easy, but like, all of the things that have just checksums on them, if I can take all of those things and chuck them in, I can chuck them in IPFS as IPFS objects, and I can go and I can store them in Filecoin. Like this is like so good. Like I can like scrap like all sorts of package manager nonsense, and I can just like anywhere there are collections of hashes, I can like get the bytes. And people use the file abstraction everywhere. Directory is less, files everywhere. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I think there's like
Okay. So if we're not, so if our way of collaboration is not abstractions, what I'm wondering is, let's say we take the other approach. We should just have one awesome file system, and then if people want to write other ones that do the same thing, we can deal with abstractions later, right? Why did WinFS not become UnixFS v2? Like, do we have a people problem of we're not accepting changes to the standard pieces quick enough? Like, or like, do we decide that a capability that we want people to be able to have is to like be able to have versioning and encryption. Like the gateways would be able to read WinFS natively if the people who are writing the gateways updated their software to run them. So is that like a protocol labs is controlling the big one and not moving fast enough, or like what's the problem?
I would like WinFS to do that. I don't think it's done yet, as far as I understand. Yeah, but like I think the main thing we would still need to have linked to UnixFS from WinFS in some way.
There's two pieces. There's the public stuff and the private stuff. The things that require keys, the IPFS URI has no space for them. Like my 2 cents, the main tragedy of IPFS // is that there is no escaping scheme at all, which means like we got what we got and we're like kind of locked in, or you break someone, which is like real sad news. And so you could do this. You could take and you've written code for this, right? The let me try out and see if this is UnixFS and then fall back into the data model code can, if perhaps properly constructed and depending on exactly the particulars of how WinFS works, can do the thing that says try it out. Does it look like UnixFS? Does it look like WinFS? Fall back to data model. This is like, but this becomes increasingly difficult without signaling mechanisms. And the signaling mechanisms are part of the abstraction story. What am I signaling to you?
Unless we add a new namespace, so it would be such.
Yes, and if you add a new namespace, then you get into the everybody hates us territory.
I think this is a reasonable place to do that.
We already have multi-codecs. We already have. You can do IPFS ://WNFS or UnixFS / like.
We can't do that.
Why?
Browsing basis. The first thing has to be the origin. But we
Well,
could
then you do it after the top.
yeah, we could do something like CID dot.
That works. CID dot WinFS.
Yeah, that does cause some problems.
File extension look exactly like that. Cool. We'll actually understand what we need.
It's not a bad idea. it messes with IPNS because people are using IPFS for IPNS. But it's
I'm
fine.
also assuming that there will never be dots in CID. Which sounds like.
These are dots after CID.
Yeah, but if there is dot after the CID, you don't know if like it's just part of the CID.
They're based 32, but they have to be based 32 encoded because of your eyes, so there's the guarantee that there is no dot.
Yeah, we don't really, like, yeah, we can't just guarantee that and say that you cannot use it.
Don't put dots in there.
Like, we already reserved slashes, and spaces and all of that, so.
But I feel like that's a very solvable problem, especially if we have a limited set of things that we want to put.
Just, yeah, I really don't see the problem with just saying WNFS :/ and just saying that that's a new thing. The thing is, it could become branding stuff like maybe a bit problematic.
But I mean,
Don't look at me, I don't standardizing them, I'm done.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so the problem is, I think, with standardizing, I think, but don't we have VWeb now? Can we use VWeb?
No.
No, just go VWeb : /
Instead, because it's
Oh, so what is it?
authority, what's the authority here?
When did we get IPFS? Is that standardized? I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
so
like,
it seems
yes,
like
I
if
get
nothing
that.
else,
Okay.
everyone who wants to do possibly ever competing things or ever be future space should figure out where in URL land they want their indicators to go, because we've already shot our shots too many times and like really.
So, okay, there's still a lot here. I would happily keep going, but I want to free up people to need to. I'm going to take the next few minutes, maybe go a little longer to see if there are proposals for talks with people, discussions people want to have, or talks they want to give tomorrow during the a block of time allocated to this section and the data transfer section.
So this will be for
Anyone?
the afternoon tomorrow,
Tomorrow afternoon, yes. on the
after
schedule.
we've had the data transfer.
Correct,
conversation.
so the data transfer stuff is tomorrow from 9 until noon. And then we have uncom from 1
9
until 5.
I propose that we all take time to think about it and maybe async post in the channel.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
It's like, I also want to hear the data transfer stuff, and like, there's a real.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're gonna fill, yeah.
The very first thing on the agenda for the unknown is picture unknown. So we can do a little bit, but I would definitely like put stuff, I would suggest put asynchronous ideas in Slack now, so you can, you know, in case there's a lot of people.
Yeah,
Or only people.
even if it's just now, just take a few minutes to maybe do it, then you'll see people as they walk out of the room that you're like, I'd like to understand what you're talking about, or please come talk to me about this, block this time for me. And then, thank all of you for like sharing your ideas and participating stuff. This is great. I feel like there's been a lot of movement on this stuff compared to what happens when we're not together and don't get to hammer these things out. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nadine.